Hi, I'm Amy. Thank you for tuning in. It's been a while since I've done one of these, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Sarah Naughton, the author of You Better Watch Out, which is the December even, YA book club pick. Thank you so much for coming on, Sarah. It's lovely to chat to you.
Hello, nice to meet you.
It was really amazing, actually, that Harriet from Scholastic asked me if I want to interview Sarah. And I, at the same time, for the YA book club, was thinking that I wanted to do some wintry reads. So I put your book into the stack, let people choose, and they actually picked your book out. So we are reading your book at the same time that I've managed to interview you. It doesn't normally happen like this sort of synchronicity in publishing, but I'm delighted that it has. So it'll be really nice for the people who normally watch my channel, and then for the people who do the book club as well, that they can get a little insight into your book as they're reading it and after they've read it.
Excellent.
So hopefully we can give some insights. We're not going to delve into spoilers, but let's start by talking about the book. Can you tell us a little bit about it for people who haven't read it or haven't got to it yet?
Okay, so I'm rubbish at the lift pitch. I will try and encapsulate it and not.
Go for it.
So Ellery is picked out by a secret Santa at her school. She doesn't know who it is, but she's hoping that it's this boy that she likes. And she gets given a real life advent calendar. So there's an abandoned tower block near her, and the flats start lighting up one by one, and as the countdown goes towards Christmas, and she has to go to each window, each flat, and collect the gift that is waiting for her every day from the 1st of December. And initially it starts out really exciting, and she's kind of happy and in their nice presents, but then they start to have this slightly sinister twist, and they start to remind her of something that happened the year previously when a new girl that had just joined the school, who she had befriended, went missing. And she realizes that the gifts seem to have something to do with this missing girl. And as we get nearer to Christmas, it starts getting really scary.
It's a great hook for a book. I remember reading the blurb when Harry asked me if I wanted to read it, and I was like, yes, I think that it just, the time of year plus my favourite genre, like put together, is such a great idea. I was wondering, where did the idea come from? Was there anything particular? Was it literally you just picked up an advent calendar? And
yes, pretty much. I can remember sitting at the dining table behind me, and my son's Lego advent calendar was it's like 17, so really he's a bit old for Lego advent calendars.
There's no such thing.
And it kind of looked a bit like a block of flats. I thought, that would be cool to have a real life advent calendar where the windows light up. And then I had to think, hang on a minute, but you couldn't do it in a normal block of flats, and you couldn't do it in a school or a hospital because the lights would come on and off at random times. So I had to think about, okay, so what would the setting be? So that I ended up with 2 tower blocks on this estate, one of which was inhabited and one of which wasn't. And I ended up there because of the Grenfell thing, the cladding. There's buildings in London which have this cladding on, which is flammable, and a lot of the buildings, you can't insure them and you can't get mortgages on them, so they're not inhabited, they just sit there. And so I thought, that's a good place to have it. So Ellery sits in her flat watching the lights appear from the ground floor of the flat opposite, the block of flats opposite. So I started with, and then I was thinking, okay, so how did she end up with this advent calendar? So then I backtracked and did the secret Santa idea. So it all sort of just came from the advent calendar first, and I worked back and then worked forward from there.
It's great. I love it. And it's a very chilling idea, I think, those 2 tower blocks together and the sort of dark mirror of one, and realizing that if you can see into it, they can see into your flat as well. It just, that whole thing, I was really creeped out for Ellery, and just the idea of her going into this building every time on her own. This is why I wouldn't be a main character in a book. I'm such a scaredy cat. I thought it's that line between brave and foolhardy that characters have to have, isn't it? I'm going to go into the abandoned building.
She's not brave. She doesn't want to do it. When she realizes there's something wrong, she really doesn't want to do it. But the secret Santa makes it impossible for her not to go in. So he starts, threatening her family, basically. So she has to. She has no choice.
It's very scary. So that is obviously a great hook. Do you have any tips? Because you've written obviously other thrillers in the past. Do you have any tips for coming up with a great hook? Because I think that's the thing with the thriller, that it's so difficult. You can write a great book, but if you haven't got that concise hook, it's never going to attract readers or publishers' attention. So how do you do that? How do you know that your hook is you?
I was thinking about this question. I was thinking, like, is the hook basically the first thing that you come up with? And it's not, is it? You come up with your main plot, but I think the hook is like where you decide to kick the plot off. So it's just at what point you go in. So I'm writing one at the moment, another YA one, and a boy goes missing, and so it's what point do you come in with the hook? Because the hook is that he's gone missing. At what point do you get in with that? When they find out, or so? Yeah, I think it's just, you know, cut out the chaff at the beginning and come. You need to come in. You need to set a scene. Obviously, I feel that you need to introduce your characters, and then you want to be right in there straight away. Really, first couple of pages, I think.
Yeah, I remember somebody said to me, I wish I could remember who told me this, because it was good advice to start a beat before the action. Like often it's just like that character taking a breath before they go into the big thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And like in the first Mina book, she's literally just on the street where she's heading towards this location where something's going to happen. So you just get that step before the things kick off, just so you can meet her, know where she is, know who her sister is. But yeah,
I was reading this really good book recently. I was so shocked when so you're just following this family on a country walk, and you were in the heads of both the children who had a problem with each other of some petty thing, and they were each kind of plotting on how to get their own back with each other, and then suddenly the whole family is murdered. And it was such a shock. Even though I knew I was reading a thriller, it was such a shock because I was totally engrossed in the characters, but the writer came in so skillfully, really quickly, and just shook it all up completely. It was great.
That's why you need to not know that going into a book, don't you, to have that great experience? Because I remember there's one.
I knew it was a thriller, and it was just so beautifully written. I'd completely forgotten, and I was like, "Oh yeah, how's she gonna tell her mum about that?" And then suddenly it was all irrelevant because they were all dead.
That is the way as well to hit a parent, isn't it? In the heart, you know, involve children in that, like.
Well, you know, she was a very good writer, and you were in the minds of the children. You were seeing their dilemmas, not as you were relating to them perfectly as characters.
Oh, that's chilling. I'm going to ask you afterwards what that is, so that in case people want to discover it for themselves, they can do.
I'll try and remember the name as we go forward.
Yeah, do it. So, and you know, if people can.
Kate Atkinson.
Oh, cool. Excellent. I'll look that up. I'm going to write that down. So the next thing I want to talk to you about then was character development, because I think that the book obviously has a lot of minor characters and then the group of main characters as well. How do you make everybody, even the most minor character, feel like a real person with a real life behind them?
You need them to, I don't know if you find this, you need them to behave in a certain way for your plot to work.
Yeah.
For them to behave in that way, they have to be a certain type of character. So for Callista is Ellery's best friend, and she's not the most brilliant friend. She's quite a flawed friend. You could say toxic. She's a toxic person, but I think if anything, the book is about forgiveness, and it's about choosing whether you want to forgive someone. And so I was quite a possessive friend when I was a kid, and I didn't like my friends. I was quite insecure, and I didn't like my friends having other friends, and I felt very threatened by that. So I channeled that into Callista, because she needs to be that person in order for my plot to go the way it does, without giving too much away. So then I had to give her a backstory that would make her. I was just possessive. I mean, I don't know what my backstory was that made me like that. But Callista has a backstory where her mum left her and her dad and went to live with somebody else and his children. And she feels completely replaced by that. And she's really traumatized by that. And so she is clinging very much to her best friend. And when she feels that there's something that might be threatening that, she reacts very badly to it. And I suppose that in that way, that's how all the characters unfolded. Like I wanted them to do a certain thing. And you're in a kind of like a negotiation with your characters, aren't you? Like, if you want me to do that thing, then you have to make me motivated in order to do it. So they don't write, you are in control in the sense of the plot, but once you've got your plot, you're not really in control of the characters anymore. You just have to dig up what it is that's making them behave like that. Do you find that?
Yeah, sometimes they surprise you. I've told this before, that in my second book, the killer changed because the killer didn't want to be the killer, and I got halfway through, and this character was like, "Actually, I'm not the killer. Sorry, like you set me up to be, but I'm not." And actually, that was good because then I had all these brilliant, well, I think brilliant, debatable, but I had these red herrings set up because I'd planned this person to be the killer, and then I changed my mind. It just wasn't working. I was like, "Why isn't it working?" It's like because the killer's somebody else who has a similar motive, but obviously coming at it from a different angle, different person. I like what you said. The fact
people like my mum, who always knows who the killer is. She would have spotted those red herrings, but she won't. I'll get her to read that book, and she'll never spot it.
I really want to know what people. I think the third of my books, the one that I'm just editing now, has got less twists in, but I feel like the twist, I'm really proud of it. So I'm hoping that people might be surprised by what I've done with this one.
I think a lot of twists can be kind of exhausting after a while. You just see what was that? Pretty Little Liars. Like I had no idea what was going on after about series 2 of that. It was just everything you thought they would turn it on its head, and it was gripping for a while, and then I just thought, I don't know who's who or what's going on in this story. I don't know who to relate to. The thing that draws you in is the story, and twists are part of that, but there can be too many, I think, sometimes.
I do like twists, and I think as long as they're well executed and I see, how did I not figure that out? I love that moment of feeling like they've really pulled the wool over my eyes, but in a clever way. But I don't like it if it comes from nowhere and I feel cheated, that it just isn't, it's just been put in there for the shock factor. So
you do want a twist to be a sort of like that. And if you've got one every chapter, it diffuses it a bit, doesn't it? It diffuses that punch.
I struggle with that with the body count as well. In the third book, there's quite a high body count in some places, and I don't want Mina to just be jaded. It's like, oh, another person's dead. But it just really, because it's the third book in a trilogy, I just felt that drive towards some of it needs to be completely broken down to the ground, doesn't it, by the end of a trilogy? So
yeah, sure, yeah, that's your Helm's Deep moment where everyone gets wiped out.
Oh God, I did have a moment as well of, do I need to do this Return of the King thing, like the hour long, where that you have to see where every character's gone and in the extended cut and what?
Yeah.
Oh, there's just another 1,000 pages of this book where you get to see
very long resolutions. I have to really cut my resolutions down when you've got a lot of characters. You want to see what happens to them.
Yeah, I found that hard. I ended up adding one extra scene in Mina 3 to get away with it, because it did end a bit brutally sharp, and I was like, oh, maybe I need to actually, give these characters a bit more breathing room.
Exactly. And breathing space for the reader as well.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it, in a thriller? So as we were saying about the twist, what is your hint then? Obviously, you're not a fan of absolutely loads of twists and you want them to be brilliant. How do you write a twist that people don't see coming, but also don't feel cheated because it comes from nowhere? What's the balance between those two things?
I don't think I think in terms of twists. I mean, I suppose. I read a book called Story by Robert McCaw, and he talks about turning points.
Yes.
And it's just a thing happens that drives the plot somewhere else. I suppose that's the thing for me. Maybe. Yeah, it's like, what clue have you found? What does that reveal for you? What do you discover there? More of a kind of journey than a journey that sort of zigzags, rather than a series of going back on yourself. And maybe I should try that actually. Next one, I'll think in terms of twist, 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 and see. Might be very exciting. The
best advice I heard on that, James Masters plays Spike on Buffy, so you wouldn't think he'd be giving writing advice, but he did say that he really liked Joss Whedon's writing because he did the opposite of what you would expect a writer to do, but he executed it brilliantly. Like anybody who knows Buffy well, there's something he does with Angel's character, who's Buffy's main love interest at the time, that just completely is the opposite of what you'd want him to do, but he does it so well that you're like, okay, that was a brilliant idea, I'll let you have that one. And then he flips it again on its head and does something else. And he just, I don't know, he just really takes you. If you want a lesson in writing, I'd say definitely watch Buffy, because
I've heard it. Amazing. I've watched some, but I haven't, I'm not mega. I can see you're mega obsessed.
Yeah, there's the Buffy shelves behind me that says it all. I just think it's brilliant in terms of writing. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about, I'm always really interested with people who move writing for different ages. So you've written, your debut was a thriller, is that right, for adults?
Yeah, it was super thriller for sort of 12 plus. Yeah.
Oh, 12 plus, sorry. So and then the adult ones came after that, did they?
Yeah, yeah.
So what is it like writing for different audiences? How do you decide that before you go into it, that this is, I'm writing a YA now, I'm writing an adult book now, and how do you change it as you go?
I think I just fell in love with YA. I just think that teenagers live a more sort of pure emotional experience. So when you're writing for teenagers, you're channeling your own teenage self, aren't you? You're much more connected to visceral emotion. And so the stories are about really visceral things. And what I found different about writing for adults was, and I don't particularly like reading thrillers for adults. I don't like reading about mortgages and, failing marriages and pregnancies and work problems and promotions and stuff. I find it all really boring, actually. I mean, obviously not all adult thrillers are boring. Lots of adult thrillers are really exciting, but I find teenage issues just much more gripping. Life is like when you're a teenager, isn't it? That most of the time you're bored, but when you're not bored and something's going on, it's either absolutely brilliant and insanely exciting, or it's absolutely horrible and you want to curl up in a ball and die. Whereas adult life is more like that most of the time. Sometimes it's incredibly stressful, like divorces and moving houses and things, but you're discovering it all for the first time when you're a teenager. And it just seems more, it shines brighter.
Yeah, and I think that when you're an adult, the landmarks are probably bigger in a way, like, say, getting married and having a child were the two biggest things in my life. And having a book published, probably third on the list. But yeah, I think that the day-to-day minutiae is very much bogs you down when you're an adult. Whereas I remember being at uni, it was like the best part of being an adult, where you'd got no responsibilities, like your bills just kind of automatically got paid from your student loan. They just came out and you could live like an adult. And I think that is probably what I chase a little bit in young adult books. I think that's probably why Mina goes away to stay with her sister. There's no kind of responsible adult in sight.
You have complete freedom of choice. So you are following your heart completely, and all the things that you really want to do, all the whims that you have. You make bad decisions because you just think you quite fancy doing something. Whereas once you've got a family, you're stuffed. All you're trying to do is maintain stability, and that's a bit boring, really.
Yeah, and I think that's why you said the adult books can throw in things that is the last thing we want, like divorce or your mortgage, like you're having trouble repaying it. Like, they're the things we don't want to think about. So being confronted with it in a book, I totally get that. That isn't necessarily what I want. But I don't know, I love reading adult thrillers and I love reading YA ones, but I definitely prefer YA.
There's a lot of characters in adult thrillers who are actually behave like children.
Yeah,
like Amy in Gone Girl. And that's why that was so exciting, because she wasn't bound by the conventions and the traps that the rest of us feel bound by. She just did what she wanted, and that's why she was a really exciting character.
I kind of wish she didn't have my name. Like, when people say to you, what book characters have got your name? It's like, well, Amy from Little Women, who's a bit of a brat. I'm sorry if anybody loves Amy. But I did find, when I was growing up, I found that she was a really spoiled one. And my mum named me after her instantly. And then I've got Amy from Gone Girl. I mean, they're great.
Yeah, Gone Girl's great, though.
Yeah. Great character, not so great if you actually knew her in real life. She might ruin your whole life. So we've talked characters, we've talked your YA journey a little bit. So you wrote YA. Did you write one YA book and then go to adult for a little while and then back to YA?
I wrote 2 historical YA thrillers, and then Orion approached my publisher, my agent, and asked me to write some adult thrillers. So I wrote 4 of those. And then I really missed YA and I really wanted to get back into it. And so I just, came up with the idea for You Better Watch Out and wrote it and went out on submission. And it was like really exciting to get another YA deal. I've got another book coming out with Scholastic and that's also seasonal. It's about an exam. It's about an A-level exam that goes really badly wrong, and that's coming out at A-level time. So I've sort of got into this habit of doing time-based things.
That's very cool. I like the idea. So is that next year or the year after?
Yeah, next May.
Whoa, that's not long between books, is it? That's a fast turnaround.
Yes, it was quite a quick turnaround, that one. It's called Your Time Is Up, and it's
Oh, that's another good title. A lot of people, when it got picked in the book club, said that it was the title that drew them in, and the tagline, because it says, let me read it, you better watch out, you better not die. I mean, that's genius. Was that you that came up with that?
No, publisher. I called it The 24th Door, and I thought I was going to have, windows with one little window lit up, and it was going to look all kind of literary. And they went, nope, this is what we're calling it. and like it's quite a thing now. I see so many books that are big titles taking up the whole front. But we were talking earlier about if you know the genre that you like, you want to go into the big bookshop and be able to go, that's the stuff I like. And so that's just
exactly
a way of telling you, I suppose.
You look at that and everything about it says YA thriller, doesn't it? Like there's going to be no mistaking that on a table, which is, I appreciate that. So let me see what else I was going to ask. So this is another thing that struck me about this book. As well as being a thriller, it deals with a lot of really challenging subjects that I think some authors slip a little bit of in, but you'd got a lot of like people who don't have a home, people from all kinds of different backgrounds, people that have had lots of things happen in their lives. How do you navigate writing that in general? And then how do you navigate writing difficult subjects for teenagers?
I don't know, really. I mean, that stuff happens to people. I know people that everything in that book has happened to. That's just real life. And particularly if you live in London, that is real life. You see it all the time. So I never really thought that was anything unusual, really. It's just like if you get to know anybody, they're going to have some trauma in their background that has, and so it's just depicting real life. With teenagers, I think teenagers see, well, what we were talking about, their lives are like that. I mean, they're used to quite traumatic experiences. Being a teenager, having puberty, and navigating the world of teenagers is quite traumatic. It's quite difficult. So I didn't even think that it was dealing with difficult subjects. I thought it was just dealing with normal life.
Maybe that's how you were able to tackle it head on, that it just became part of the world that you were writing and like the real world kind of as you see it. Because I think mine's set in New Orleans, so it's very different. And I grew up somewhere nowhere like London. So I think for me, some of the issues are things that as a teenager, like I was obviously aware of them. I don't think I'd had that immediate experience of them. So I think it's interesting because there will be teenagers reading it who, like me, were quite kind of sheltered and lucky that I hadn't experienced a lot of those things or been exposed to them. But then there'll be teenagers that this is their frame of reference, that they might have had parents going through all kinds of things.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not necessarily writing for those people who have had those experiences, but my tastes veer towards the dark. I like horror; that's my favorite genre. I like supernatural, ghost stories, things like that. So these very light. I mean, you get quite a lot of light, fun thrillers. That's I prefer mine dark and gritty, I've got to say. So that's probably just coming out in my own tastes.
I think it does tend to, doesn't it? Like I do like the kind of fun, cozy capers, I think is my main sweet spot. I read every type of thrillers, every type of horror. Sometimes to my detriment because I'm a bit of a scaredy cat. But I think I like the kind of cozy, slightly silly ones the best, I think. And that is what I write. Like, I mean, the third book's just, I think they've got steadily more outlandish as I've grown in confidence. Like I'm going to really let it all hang out in this last book. So yeah, I think it is great if you can write exactly what you enjoy. Because I think as writers, you can end up, you write something like this for us, and you end up writing something that isn't actually for you. But do you think then that this is for you? Like this is your genre, that given the choice, that's what you would stick with?
Yeah, definitely. The stuff I choose to watch. I like Mike Flanagan. Do you know Mike Flanagan, who does rewrites of all the classic horrors like The Turn of the Screw and Haunting of Hill House?
Yeah.
And they're really, really dark, and I absolutely love it. I mean, horror is actually good for you, good for your like mental health, because apparently when you start watching a horror, your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, your fight or flight mechanism. And so, you know, your heart beats faster and all your blood rushes to your organs. But then your body realizes that you're not in any danger. So the parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, which relaxes you and sends your heartbeat lower, and, you know, all the things that reduces adrenaline, reduces cortisol. So it's actually relaxing to watch horrors. And if I'm having a really stressful time, all I want to do is come home and put Black Mirror on or some Netflix horror. And I just find it incredibly relaxing. But you obviously like cozy crime. I don't find that. They're okay, but like I want to be properly scared. And then I know I'm going to go to bed and sleep like a baby.
Yeah, I mean, I do, but I also like, my favourite horror movie is Scream, and I love stuff like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend. So I do watch those if I want a bit of comfort. I'm just going to watch a load of university students.
They are fun. They're fun, and there's no real threat. You're not really scared in those films.
Yeah, that's the key. I think fun for me is the key. If I can have some fun during it as well. Like, I think the self-referential quality of Scream and stuff like that, and that some of the kills are so ridiculous, like Gary's doors and whatnot.
Yeah. So I prefer The Omen and The Exorcist.
I do, you know, I like those as well. It's funny, isn't it, that within horror and within thrillers, like, we tend to get pigeonholed as horror, writers, and thriller. And God forbid you write for children and write thrillers. You're just completely written off by certain people who see fiction as being just this literary thing. But I think there's still so much room for variation, isn't there, within thriller and horror? Like, you can have literary horror. Like, I just read Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so literary and so brilliant, and so well written, and really messes with your head, but is also this really insidious, creepy horror. And it's great. I love that with horror, that you can go from light and fun to dark, and really will mess with your head and make you question everything.
So every book, there's a book for everybody. There's a book that speaks to you out there. That's why I feel sad when I go to schools now and I see how few readers there are, because every one of those children will be able to find a book that will change their lives. I really believe that, even if they're not natural readers. I got the book that changed mine, of course, but my husband has, and he doesn't read any books. But this one book, it was Truman Capote. What's the famous Truman?
In Cold Blood.
In Cold Blood, it changed his life, and you get him talking about that, and he doesn't stop. So it's great that we've got this huge, wonderful array of tastes and wonderful array of writing styles to talk to. Some book will talk to some child or some person out there.
Yeah, when I was a teacher, I think there were only 1 or 2 children that really resisted me finding the book for them. Out of the hundreds that I taught, I went from lots of non-readers not interested to finding horrible histories or Beast Quest or Wimpy Kid, like whatever it was, whether it was graphic novel in form or heavily illustrated or below their reading level in inverted commas. I do believe that you can find a book for any child and get people into reading. I haven't done that many school events because day job plus looking after a small person, that I really need to be there at the beginning and end of every day. But I'm excited about getting into more schools. I've got some lined up for next year when he starts school.
Terrifying, completely terrifying.
Because I used to teach
like 200 teenagers in front of me, and
I don't find it that bad. I think, the big crowds are always difficult. I have done a couple of things. Like I did a book award where there was a great big auditorium of teenagers. But I think the small group ones I'm fine with, just because I used to teach. So I like
small group ones, yeah, it's much more intimate, and you can see that you can make eye contact with somebody. You know who in that group is really interested in what you're saying. It's not always the ones that put their hand up and say that they're readers as well.
Oh yeah, it's great if you can get somebody writing. I had a kid in the last one I did that was really, really into the gruesome stuff, and his teacher said she hadn't seen him write that much. I was like, because you didn't let him write about murder. Something, get him write about murder and it's fine. But and as a teacher, I didn't have an issue with that. I was quite happy if they were writing about something they were interested in, and there was age appropriate within reason.
About books that children don't get is that they will not be allowed into bars until they're 18. They will not be allowed into 15 films until they're 15.
No.
But there's a world of books out there where they can go anywhere they want, and nobody's really keeping an eye on them. I mean, there's getting more censorship, particularly in America. But in the UK, when I was 12, I was reading James Herbert, and there's really inappropriate stuff in James Herbert, but it's like, whoa, this is what happens in the world. It's unfettered access to whatever you want in books, and they should be exploiting that, because they wouldn't get it on Netflix and they won't be able to access it in the cinema.
And the thing is about books is a teen and an adult can put down, like some books as an adult. I think certain content, I'm not into huge amounts of grief in a book. I find really difficult, and I can put it down. So like, I think that teenagers need to be given more credit, that if they do find some content that isn't right for them that time or isn't right for them at all, you know, they can just read something else. I think
I agree. If you don't like it, don't read it. Yeah, I put books down all the time. My concentration span has just shrunk so much as social media has grown. So I can give a book maximum about 2 chapters, and then if I'm not interested, there's too many books out, too many wonderful books out there to waste your time on something that isn't speaking to you, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the thing I'd say to kids: pick something else up, and if you don't like some content, you know, read something else. If it's not your type of thing, find something else. And that's what I tried to do with the kids at school, just get them reading. It's so important.
Yeah.
So I think I had a couple more questions and then we will wrap this up. But what was the next thing I wanted to say? Yes. So the last 2 questions then. What is the main thing you enjoy about writing thrillers? Because obviously that's whether you're writing for adults or teens, what is it about thrillers that really gets you excited?
Well, that's a difficult one. I like to rescue my heroines. I like to put them in really dire situations that are full of jeopardy and tension, and I like them to get themselves out of it. And that feeling of relief afterwards, when you have a happy ending, I suppose, although not the happy ending of like princess marrying her prince, but like we were talking about how horror films can be comforting. That is a wonderfully comforting experience, reading a thriller that ends okay with your heroine succeeding and things resolving themselves, and whatever was going on in her life before that wasn't really working out for her, it then works out at the end. It's very satisfying, generally.
That's a good answer. I was just thinking as you said it, like, what is mine? And I think it's similar. I enjoy following a character on a journey and pushing them through some really difficult situations and seeing how they'll respond. And I think doing that over 3 books has been interesting as well, because Mina's grown from being quite like I was as a teenager, quite naive and not seen or done anything, to having suffered some quite, you know, gone through some really difficult situations and how she's come out of it. I've really enjoyed that. It's been hard writing a trilogy. Trying to keep everything straight in my head and keep everything going for 3 books.
But I wonder if people will remember the main arc, not the individual books. Like when I remember Harry Potter, I remember that final confrontation with Voldemort, and that's that final resolution for him, and that triumph, that ultimate triumph. That's what people, I think. I might be in the minority here, but with Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games, I remember the final triumph over the Capitol and over Snow. That's the thing that sticks with you. The triumph over the obstacle and the achievement of the goal.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like both. I like seeing how somebody's come through a big journey, especially if they have gone through a massive transformation like Katniss. Although she had a lot of those qualities inside her to begin with, she was really pushed, wasn't she? I do like thinking about the beginning of a series and how they were at the end. And then series like Daughter of Smoke and Bone, where characters don't necessarily know everything about themselves, and then they, you know, some of the parts of their history are kind of murky. I like that as well, that you've learned things with them over the book and you remember the position they're in at the start. I suppose that's a great thing, isn't it, that people take different things out of a trilogy. Some people will remember that last note, some people will have followed that whole journey through.
Well, no, I've read all those books, and at the time I really enjoyed them, and I would have been totally gripped by the individual arc of the book. But looking back, you know, years later, I remember the main arc of the character and that moment of wonderful achievement at the end.
Let's hope I've done that in mine as well. Just thinking, is my ending a good wonderful achievement? I hope it is. So the last question I want to ask you is if you've got anything specific that you'd like to recommend or that you're planning to read this festive season. I'll start with mine if you want, to give you a minute to talk about it. I recommend this. I say recommend. I haven't read it yet, but I'm planning to, because I really liked Ravina's other book. And I did an event with her recently to talk about this one, and it sounded brilliant. Catch Your Death came out early December, I think. Yeah, December. So I'm definitely planning to read this one because I've had the proof for a while, and I've started reading this, and it's so good. 12 Days of Murder. It's Andrina Cordani's debut, and it's about a bunch of people who go to play a murder mystery. I think it's 12 years after the last time they did it as a group. Somebody went missing and is presumed dead, and then the group have got back together to do it again, as you would in a remote snowy location, where one of you might be a murderer from the last time. And it's great so far. I'm having so much fun. I'm just a bit deadlined at the moment to finish reading it.
So do you think that after Christmas you'll still want to read a Christmas book?
Probably. I don't know. I think I want most of my work to be done by the end of next week. My deadline's end of January, my final deadline. But I want to have a little breathing room over Christmas, so hopefully I'll get to read. Certainly these two are my plan, and I've got a couple of proofs that I've been sent that I really want to read. And I've said that I'll blurb some as well, so I need to do those very quickly too. How about you? Is there anything that you really want to read this festive season?
I was saving up Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez.
Oh yeah.
And I couldn't save it up anymore, and so I just devoured it in 2 days. So I've got her other one, which is what's it called? Hang on a minute.
I've got it on my shelf, but I can't remember what it's called. I won't be able to spot it either now to help you out.
Dangers of Smoking in Bed.
Oh,
so they're quite gothic, dark short stories set in Argentina, and they're just a joy to read, and you can eat one up in about sort of 20 minutes. And I'm going to be doing that over Christmas. Otherwise, my massive recommendation for a Christmas book is Dark Matter by Michelle Paver. She wrote the Wolf Brother trilogy for young adults, but she's written this brilliant ghost story, and it's set in the Arctic. And it's not
I have read it. Is it the one about the expedition where they go into the Arctic and it's everything starts to go wrong? Yeah, I loved that. I didn't realize it was called Dark Matter. I read it on my Kindle.
Oh, I've read it about 3 times, and now I think I know exactly what's going to go on. So I'm not going to have that same sort of sheer goosebump terror that I had the first time. But I'd like to find, if you find a book like that, then tell me about it, because I like being scared over Christmas.
Do you know what I am reading? If you can track down a copy of it, it comes out in April. CJ Tudor's new book, The Gathering, is set in Alaska. And it's a detective who's been sent to investigate this murder that may have been committed by vampires. And there's a vampire colony just on the fringes of this town. And if it's found to be vampires, then they'll cull this whole group of vampires. And they're completely cut off by the snow and the storms at the moment. And all hell is about to break loose. I've nearly finished reading it, and it's so good.
Setting. The shiny setting, it's cold and it's remote, and no one coming to save you. Love that.
It's amazing. If I hadn't been reading it this winter, because it comes out April, I would be saving it for next winter, because it's just that feel of complete isolation that done really well in an isolated. You can't get any more isolated really, kind of, than Alaska. They're cut off from civilization. The few routes that they've got in and out of this town that they live have all been cut off by the weather, and she's just there trying to solve this murder by herself in this really inhospitable town. It's just great.
Like when it's Christmas, and if you're lucky enough to be somewhere cozy and comfortable with people that you love at Christmas, that's when you want to dip your toe into those really scary, dangerous.
What is it about us?
You're by the fire drinking port with the candles lit. It's the perfect place to do it. The perfect Christmas book is, of course, A Christmas Carol. I listened to it on the audiobook while I was wrapping presents the other day, and it was just so good. I'm reduced to tears by the Tiny Tim bit. Even though I've known it since I was a child, it's still a gut punch, and that redemption at the end, it's just a perfect Christmas story.
It is. The Muppets Christmas Carol is still like almost annual watching for me. I think it's amazing. Like a really beautiful.
Brilliant. It's the best version, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. I've tried watching adult versions, and they're not as good.
No, it is ultimate Christmas Carol. Dickens would have loved it.
I think so. So let's end on that note. Watch Muppets Christmas Carol. Obviously, read this thrilling. I can't even say thrilling. What is happening? A thrilling wintry book. I said thrilling. It's not very thrilling, is it? Thrilling. Thrilling wintry book. Thank you so much. I knew I'd enjoy chatting to you and that we'd have lots to say. Thank you everyone for watching. The live chat for this book is going to be in early January, where I'll be chatting to a few friends on screen, and then people can join us in the comments if they want to chat about it as well. So thanks so much, Sarah. Thank you everybody for watching, and hopefully I will see you soon in the next video. Bye.